Okay, I had a couple issues. They're actually pretty simple, but they did cause some issues. So, couple things. The return type was incorrect here. Didn't like it no matter how I did it. Excuse me. This is the other one. I didn't like how I did the return type no matter what I did. Um, Literally no matter what I did, it didn't like it. I couldn't get the data out of it. Nothing was going when I did that. However, just using this logout user, it was totally working. It just wasn't getting the data out of it. We don't need the data or care about the data. In fact, I just used a string. Session storage dot clear clears the storage, and then we navigate away wherever we want to navigate. Now, why do we have this here? By making this by making it public and doing the things we want to do. Oh, sorry. I actually have a how to use Angular router, but I'll explain that in a minute. So having it here allows me to put it everywhere else, right? Anywhere I need it, I can just make that user, what you call it now. In real terms, I might create a special service to do it, but I don't really need to. It's fine if it's user, what you call it, we can totally make that public. That's not a big deal. Okay. It would just change the credentials, which would be the same as the user going to log in. It wouldn't be necessarily super safe either way. So it's not that big a deal. There are no real private variables to worry about, and so forth. So we're pretty good. Because remember, the server side's checking everything anyway. So if you don't have the right credentials, it doesn't matter anyhow. All right. So we can go back. We have it to student list. We can do it to student. So, one thing else I can do that seems really stupid, but I've seen it done, is to have a blank component. I'm gonna show you just another way to do it because it's kind of stupid, but I can generate a component called logout. Okay. Now, logout is not a real component. It's never going to actually do anything. We're never going to change the HTML. We only want this. Okay. Now you go, wait a minute, what the hell are you doing? I'm going to show you. Okay. And we're going to be able to use a link instead, but I want to go back to my component. I want a constructor. That's it, right? Constructor. We don't want activated route. We don't want the student service. We just want private user. We'll call it service, and this is going to be the user service. Sorry, and we're going to have the router. Okay, this is going to be a little wonky for those that are kind of what you call it. All it's going to do is on its init, it's going to do the cleanup. That's all it's going to do. And you go, wait, what? I'll show you. Okay. It's going to require a navigation, which not that big a deal. It's actually just going to load a very quick, small thing. But on navigation, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Instead of saying the logout, like logout user, we can do that. We're just going to do this, right? And you go, wait, what? I'm just going to copy that, right? I'm going to show you. This is another way to do it. A lot of people don't like this. They like the previous method I did earlier. And you go, what do you mean? It is better to do the other one I showed you earlier. But this will absolutely work. Okay. Then you just have to set up a route. And we're going to call it the logout route. Right. Log out. You should only be able to be if you're logged in. Shouldn't be able to see it. And what do I call it? think I called it the log out component. There you go. And it'll immediately go to log out. And you're like, wait, what? Will this really work? Why not? Now I don't have to do anything. Now I don't have to do anything. Watch this guy. Remember the add student? And this was on detail, if I remember right, correct? Yes, I think it was on details. We're gonna go to, oh, did I stop it and start it? Saying connection refused. I'm gonna restart it. It'll clear out all the gunk too, so not a bad idea every once in a while. And let it start. There we go. Still not starting yet? Oh, I know what's wrong. It's not running. Yes. Do, 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 do. Go to Mike. Go to Mike. Add students. We're gonna go. Excuse me. We already did this logout, so we're gonna go here. I'm gonna click the logout here. Works the same way. Now, couple things. We don't prefer that mechanism because it requires another loaded component. We'd rather avoid that if we could. Really simple. We also have to have an extra route for it. Not really that great to have that extra thing. It's really not valuable to have it. So we don't really care about that. That mechanism where I showed you where we have the service do a calls itself kind of thing is actually a much better mechanism. Yes. You could create a special logout service that only had that method if you would care about safety and so forth, that calls another user service if you chose to do that. That's also 100% acceptable. We tend not to actually create a logout method that actually is an extra component. That is actually unusual, but you can. And now I don't have to do anything. I don't have to import anything. I just create a link and I can move it wherever I want it. That's great, but it actually does require extra loading of extra materials, which is not great. So we don't typically do that. All right. For the other recordings, I'm done adding features to the application. If you look at my thing, I talked about guards, I talked about routes, I talked about making sure credentials pass along through the interceptor. We did interceptors, we did guards, we did guarded routes, we did specified pages based on different things. I showed you how to expose a user service, a student service, user service to a method. We may have to make it public in the component. And then when we do that, we can call a method directly via a link. That works. You can create a method within the component. We've already done that with on submit and various things. You can do the output doing that. But if you do that, log out doing that, you have to do that for every page. So exposing the service, at least you have an easy way to do that. And then finally, I showed you how to do it via component. Now, we don't typically do that. But if you have an extensive logout procedure, an expensive logout procedure, or something that requires a little bit of girth, a little bit of work, we typically do. We that is definitely an option. If it requires a little more processing power, we might want to do it. But it is pretty rare to do it because it does require extra overhead. All right, so the only other things that we owe you from a feature standpoint is I'm going to talk a little bit about deployment. Deployment's going to feel and look very, very different. And why do I mean that? Because I'm going to use some drawings. I'm going to use a different computer and I'm going to use some drawings which identify mechanisms for you to understand how we can actually deploy Angular and Spring Boot together. And there are lots of different ways to do it. We'll talk about why and where we do various things. We'll talk about cores a little bit more detail, not a lot of detail, but we'll talk about cores in more detail as well in that process. But that'll be a relatively short recording. We just want to make sure you understand how that actually works. All right, thank you guys. Y'all have a great day.